Welcome to Let's Talk Adoption. The series we're in the midst of now, we're calling Wait, What? Because let's be honest, adoption is full of moments that make you stop, think, and sometimes completely rethink what you thought you knew.
This series is just for you, the adoptee, whether you're still processing your story, starting to search, or if you're years into, maybe decades into understanding how adoption has shaped your life. We want this to be a space where you can breathe, question, and grow.
We are going to talk about these surprising realizations, the kind of wait, what? Truths that can change everything you thought you knew about your story. Things like birth parents, choosing adoption out of love, maybe reunion that doesn't always have the ending that people imagine or hope for, and realizing that your identity as an adoptee can evolve and change over time.
And we're simply here to share insight, and we're absolutely never here to tell you how to feel. We're here to walk with you through the layers of adoption, the love, the loss, the curiosity, and the connection.
Because at the end of the day, adoption isn't one story, it's many stories. And if you've ever had a moment when suddenly something just clicked and you thought, wait, what? You're in the right place.
So grab a cup of coffee, or in my case, green tea, take a deep breath, and let's talk about it together.
So I think, Kim, a lot of stories we hear, adoptees we talk to, um, they grow up thinking that part of their adoption story was that their birth mother or birth family didn't want them, that the adoption happened simply because they weren't wanted or they were an inconvenience. But here's that kind of wait, what truth. Most birth mothers are choosing adoption because they love their child.
That's so important to point out, Heather, because we've talked with many adoptees over the years where being rejected is a big part of what they have to grow through and overcome. But if we rewind and instill this insight, what if it was because she loved you so much? Or, hey, what if even if you never get to meet her, you can imagine how she probably made the best decision she knew how to make at the time with limited resources, limited ability to information and options, or to access, limited access, I would say, to all the things that would have helped her make a more detailed adoption plan. And sometimes that means that a birth mom or a birth family may place a baby where she just knows and believes, has to believe that you'll be safe, cared for, and found. And I don't want you to have to read between the lines here. Private domestic adoption. She might get to the hospital and say, there's no way I can take this baby home, and trust that the hospital knows what they're doing and will get an adoption agency and will get an adoptive family. And she leaves the hospital thinking that was the way you make an adoption plan, not
Hmm.
knowing she had options to pick the family, get to know them, and all these other things, and keep in touch, not knowing that those were options, or maybe even if she knew those could be options, feeling that it might be too hard for her and not having the support to work through those things. Um, and not reading between the lines here. Let's talk about international adoption, where a child or a baby may have been found in a public area and then was taken to the orphanage to be placed via international adoption. That woman chose to place that child where she knew someone would find that child and believed that that child would be taken care of by whomever found that child. So let's recognize that there are limited resources sometimes for women when they are making these decisions and taking these steps.
Hmm. And I think the one that we kind of might have a little more of a challenge with is, children who were removed from the foster system because of abandonment or neglect. And certainly, I don't want to minimize that in any way. That is that is typically not an adoption that a mother is choosing. That is a scenario that is horrible, and that the state is stepping in to try to make an attempt to make things right for the child and to try to make things better. And those those adoptions, I mean, in everything we're talking about today, those count too. And it is hard to look back and say, well, that was my story and my mother didn't choose adoption out of love. And I can't disagree with that. But whatever the scenario that led to your adoption was someone trying to do their best for you. And, today in this day and age with domestic adoption here in the US, I think it's good to acknowledge that if your mother did choose adoption, she chose life for you. And in her heart, that also was an act of love, not rejection.
Right. And just keep in mind, not every woman knows about all the options that exist in modern adoption. Some didn't know about open adoption, or
Hmm.
maybe they were confused about it. Um, Maybe they didn't know ongoing contact was even possible, or she may have thought, if I keep in touch, it's going to confuse my child. And that's the last thing I want is my child torn between two families. Maybe
Hmm.
she just didn't have an understanding of her options and what adoption can be today. And just the reality is, most of these women who have relinquished a child in any way did the best they could with what they knew. And love was often right there at the center.
Right. I think another realization that surprises a lot of adoptees is, sometimes they may find out that their birth mother was already a mother when they made the decision to place a child for adoption. Like it wasn't a teenager who made a mistake. This was a woman who had an established family. She had children. She was parenting, and with this pregnancy, she chose to place the child into another family.
Hmm. And it can be so hard to wrap your head around as an adoptee. I've had adoptees share with me, well, why would I care about the birth mom? She didn't care about me. I found out she even had other children and placed me. I mean, she obviously rejected me, but was already able to take care of those other children.
Hmm.
And these are real thoughts and real feelings that adoptees share. And even if you know she made an adoption plan out of love for you, and even if you know the complicated, difficult circumstances surrounding her decision to place a child, even though she was already a mom, already parenting, it can still hurt a little to know that.
Right?
Like, why me? Why didn't she choose to keep me? And it's important to recognize and validate that that is a normal question, feeling, and thought. But I think it's also important to try to grow through that and understand that those difficult circumstances that brought her to create an adoption plan for you were very real to her. And
Hmm.
she wasn't able to provide you with the life she wanted you to have while also parenting the other children that perhaps she was struggling to take
Hmm.
care of and maybe wasn't meeting the standards in her mind she believes a child should be provided with. Um, she may find it too difficult on the other children to place them as well, but thought that with you, you're a newborn baby or a young toddler or only 3 or 4 years old, it won't be so traumatic versus your older biological brother and sister who have been with me for all their 7, 8, 10, 11, 15 years. But she did the best she could. And I think that is just something, a grace we need to give to a birth mom when we think about her and her plight,
Hmm.
that she's doing the best that she can. And I've never met a single woman that made any decision about a baby flippantly. And the truth is, even a woman who's already parenting can choose adoption for a child, and often it's deeply intentional. And this is a wait, what moment that a lot of people have, learning that a birth mom was already parenting and choosing adoption for their next baby.
Right. Because, sometimes, let's say with a pregnancy, sometimes a pregnancy can come at a difficult time. You think about a woman who's pregnant, already caring for other kids, and whatever her resources or circumstances, you know, if she is feeling that she's not providing the life she wants for the children she's parenting now, how can I do one more? She may feel like she's already failing her kids. Like, this is going to stretch her resources even more. Or, what we're seeing more and more is a mental health aspect of this, where, it may not be resources that are limited, it may be the emotional and the mental space she needs to provide the support and the love and um, the parenting for multiple children. It just, there's no way she feels as though she can do one more, especially when you consider that most birth mothers are on their own. Certainly birth fathers have equal rights when it comes to parental rights, but the reality is that most moms choosing adoption are on their own. And so I know it's hard as we're, trying to, maybe even reframe here, but you want to think that perhaps choosing adoption is her way of saying, I love you enough to want to give you more than I can. And that really is the motivation that we see in many, many mothers as they certainly explore adoption and then definitely, follow through and choose it.
Another scenario, I'm glad you mentioned birth fathers. The relationship or lack of relationship with a birth father can also be part of what has caused her to value adoption as an option, for a baby. Especially, let's say, I know Heather, you and I have had real life scenarios where the birth mom was married and they got separated and she was dating and she became pregnant only to reconcile with her husband.
Hmm.
And so that can be another complex situation that doesn't mean she doesn't love you, her baby, her child, but she has a complicated dynamic going on and has to make the best choice that she can. So I hope that this wait, what moment, all these moments and scenarios, and there are so many more because life is life and we're all just human walking through this life for the very first time. I hope this can flip the narrative from she didn't want me to understanding that her decision came from love, even though it was heartbreaking. And she's making a selfless choice for her child's well being, for the life she believes a child deserves.
Right. And, it's important to remember too that every adoption is unique. Every situation is unique. Some birth mothers might place one child for adoption while raising others. Um, some birth mothers may place their first baby for adoption. Some may place their last. Their choice doesn't mean they don't love their other children either. Identifying that I want more for this baby doesn't mean that they love the others less. It just means they're doing the best with what they have at hand right now.
And for adoptees listening, this is a powerful reminder. Your birth mom's choice doesn't diminish her love, her capability, or her identity as a mom. And Heather, I've loved how you've said over the years, let's set the record straight. These moms who make adoption plans are usually really good moms already.
Hmm.
And they're making a choice born from wanting the best for you, their child, even if it wasn't the easiest path. It's certainly not the easiest path.
Hmm. And sometimes when we can just understand that that she was already a mom or may have been already a mom and still made this choice out of love, it can completely shift how adoptees see their story. It takes it out of a personal um, uh, viewpoint and just kind of steps back a minute because, let's be honest, your birth mother didn't know you if she placed you at birth. You know,
Mhm.
she was making a choice, hoping to create much more for you than she could. And when you can reframe that as something someone did out of selfless love for you, that really can shift how you can view your own story. And that really is kind of the essence of these wait, what moments we're trying to talk about.
And I love that we got to talk about this because I think this is a topic that is not often discussed. I haven't
Hmm.
seen a bunch of articles or webinars or videos about this. But these are real thoughts, real feelings that adoptees have shared with us. And if you're listening right now, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Heather said. And I want you to know that the creator of the entire universe and every energetic thing that we will ever know loves you and created you uniquely. And the second that God created you as a soul in this universe, you had value.
Hmm.
And nothing that happens from the second you're born to the second you die can ever change the value that you automatically have just from God.
Hmm.
So let's continue on here. Another wait, what moment is that adoption has layers. It's not a single moment, it's an unfolding story, not just one event that happened 16, 25 years ago. It continues to unfold, right?
It does. And those moments may show up as loss, love, identity, belonging, growth, discovery. Um, and then they may start all over again, or they may all happen at once. And sometimes adoptees feel pulled in opposite directions. Um, Bittersweet feelings, grateful and yet grieving, connected, but still a little bit curious. I spoke to an adoptee here about a month ago, and she was asking me about open adoption and and kind of how it works because she was adopted in an era of closed adoption. She was in reunion with her birth mother, and in fact, she shared her birth mother and adoptive mother really hit it off. They hadn't known each other prior to her adoption or even at her adoption. But when she and her birth mother met each other with full support of her adoptive mother, um, it included the three women. And like I say, birth mom and adoptive mother were, had just a beautiful relationship of their own, separate from the adoptee. And what she asked was kind of curious. She said, "Isn't it difficult to ensure that the relationships all stay on the same level?" And I asked her, could you explain a little more? Because I mean, I would think that would be very hard to keep keep track of everything on the same level. And she shared that sometimes it's difficult for her if she forgets to tell her adoptive mom something she told her birth mom, or vice versa. And, you know, what I explained to her is, certainly you three are connected because of one thing, the adoption that connects them all. But rather than try to view the relationships as equal and fair, I said, I would encourage you to focus on real, focus on organic, focus on, not trying to keep score, but instead trying to, you know, see them as independent relationships. Certainly she has that with her adoptive mom that she's known since she was a baby. And the birth mom is, fully integrated and fully accepted by all of them. And as we talked more, what she came to realize is neither woman had ever felt upset because they weren't told something. More so, she, as the adoptee, felt as though it was her job to keep them level and equal. And as we talked at length, she really had a kind of this eye-opening experience that yes, that is not my job. My job is to, love them both, let them both love me, and to have a relationship with them together and separate. But it's not my job to keep track and keep score. And as the adoptee, it isn't. It is 100% not your job to to guard everyone's feelings and to keep everything equal.
Hmm. I love that you said that. I really feel, Heather, that someone listening to this needed, really needed to hear that and felt caught up in that push and pull that maybe they created themselves, or maybe one of their people in their lives is a
Sure.
little bit insecure
Yeah,
about her role. And but remember, as we say in modern times, that's a them problem.
that's right.
Okay. And this is all normal. These are complicated scenarios. I think coming from a place of security, understanding who you are and whose you are and your inherent value, and coming from love and really having the best intentions helps us navigate these layers. Adoption isn't about one side or the other or choosing one side of the story. It's about acknowledging all of it, the pain, the love, the questions, the hope, and hopefully the continued positive relationships, because who doesn't need more love in this world?
Hmm. Absolutely. If you're pregnant and wondering what your options really are, or if you know someone who is, I want to tell you about a book that's helped so many women sort through their thoughts and feelings. It's called So I Was Thinking About Adoption. It's honest, compassionate, and written just for women who are facing an unexpected pregnancy and want to understand what adoption could look like for them. There's no pressure, just real information and encouragement from someone who's walked this road with thousands of women. You can get So I Was Thinking About Adoption on Amazon or download it for free at freeadoptionbook.com. I think another big wait what moment can be um, for adoptees, and in the story I just told, that your identity as an adoptee isn't fixed. And many times that identity is what what we set for ourselves. So when we're able to grow and change, you find your identity evolves as your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs do as well.
Yes, and who you are at the age of 10 years old, 20 years old, 40 years old, and beyond can look completely different. And your outlook is completely different.
Hmm.
your vantage point as you get older and learn new things and get exposure to different concepts, it changes and new information, a reunification, or just time and healing can change how you understand your story, even listening to podcasts like this.
Hmm. And I think, we've alluded to the different paths that may have, led to your adoption. And certainly as we talk about, Kim, you were talking about new information. What came to mind was some of the remarkable discoveries adoptees are making through DNA testing. You know,
Hmm.
that that can give a whole nother layer of new information. And it's good to know that you are allowed to grow. You're allowed to learn and discover. You're also allowed to change how you feel about adoption, both your own and adoption in general. And these feelings definitely will change as you have other life experiences, as you gain understanding, gain knowledge, gain wisdom. And, you know, that may cause um, shifts in what you think about yourself and your identity and your purpose.
As you think through and have these different aha moments, I would definitely recommend journaling these. If
Hmm.
you have a thought that is rolling around in your mind and it is taking up a lot of space, whether that's good or bad, I mean, because it can be a good thing, get it out on paper. No one has to see it or read it or know about it, but just putting it on paper, there's just something so helpful about that. And then you can also look back on your entries from 5 years ago, 10 years
Hmm.
ago, and recognize that, yeah, your identity and your viewpoint definitely has changed. And sometimes you go back to, a previous stance on a certain aspect of your adoption, and that's all totally fine. I think journaling is good because as you go through these different vantage points and opinions and feelings about your adoption story and your identity as an adoptee, maybe you don't have someone that it's totally 100% safe to share that with, but you can journal it. And it almost serves the same purpose, right? I mean, you might have parents that you don't really feel you can truly be honest with right now about your different feelings about your identity as an adoptee and the choice your birth mom made and everything. Sometimes they can be negative, sometimes they can be positive, but if you do share it with someone, I hope that it's someone that loves you, that you can trust, that they are a vault, it doesn't go anywhere, and they're not judging you. But I'll tell you, a piece of paper and a pen will never judge you.
That's right. And if you're listening thinking, gosh, you know what? I'm an adoptee, but I've never gone this deep. I don't identify with what y'all are talking about. That's just
Hmm.
fine too. Because, for many people, it is something that happened to them once. They were adopted and now they have parents and and that's that's just fine. You know, Again, it gets to that everyone has the freedom to experience it and embrace their story as they choose. And certainly, if this doesn't resonate with you, that is absolutely fine too.
Hmm.
So, I think one of the other things that I often hear from adult adoptees is really about what they wish their adoptive parents understood or maybe even talked about or did.
Right. Things like, please let me talk about my birth family and don't be afraid of my curiosity. And overwhelmingly, what adoptees have shared with me is that it doesn't mean I love you less, meaning just because I'm curious or want to talk about my birth family and my adoption, it doesn't mean I love you less.
Hmm. And I think that's one of the great things about modern adoption today is adoptive parents are really coming into adoption understanding how important it is to talk about adoption, talk about birth families, even in international scenarios where they're not known. They understand that from the beginning there's so much value in having those conversations. And and so, when I hear an adoptee say, um, I feel torn, not because my adoptive parents did anything wrong, but because I come from, two stories and both of them matter. I think today's adoptive parents are much more, not much more, much better equipped to embrace that kind of third leg of the triad, which is the birth family.
Hmm. And we're living in a time when adoptive parents have so much access,
Hmm.
more than ever. They don't have to go to the library and pick up a book that was written 50 years ago. They can just go on YouTube. They can go on a podcast. They can learn about these perspectives and be better because they know better. And I think that's a big difference from now to, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, when people all wanted to do what was best for their child. Absolutely. And, adoptive parents who listen, who make space for these feelings, help their kids feel whole, not divided.
Right, right. And I want to talk about one other thing, Kim, and that is reunion. Um, Again, this is something we often see in closed adoption or sometimes in um, foster adoption, although that can be very, very different. Unfortunately, we don't see it as much in international, but that is when, the adoptee is reunited with some members of the birth family. Typically, it strive for the birth mother, but it may be, siblings, grandparents, other people. And it's really important. Um, in fact, this is one of those things I really enjoy talking about. Really important to not paint a reunion in adoption with a fairy tale brush. We want to um, ensure that people understand reunion doesn't doesn't mean a fairy tale ending.
Hmm. Sometimes it's beautiful and healing. Other times it's awkward, emotional, or even disappointing. And I think managing expectations and not using that fairy tale brush to predict what it's going to be like and not getting attached to how it could be, but just letting it be what it is will prepare
Mhm.
you for that. If you didn't grow up knowing your birth mom or birth family, um, it's not always a happy, beautiful thing. It can be challenging. Maybe you meet her and you meet your birth family and find you don't really feel like you're on the same page with anything. The way you've lived your life could be totally different from the way they've lived theirs, but you're still getting that opportunity to meet people you're biologically related to. You're still getting that opportunity, perhaps, to ask some questions that you've had on your mind and heart. And that's just so valuable. And you're all getting the opportunity to be known to each
Mhm.
other, which I think is so healing and helpful for adoptive parents or adoptees.
Mhm. Right. And I think it's when I talk about this is in the context of setting expectations. Um, because sometimes birth parents just aren't ready. And and by ready, I mean emotionally ready or mentally ready. Or sometimes they carry guilt or fear depending on the circumstances. Sometimes after a reunion, relationships may stay distant. Others grow slowly over years. Some may be a fast connection. I recently was at a conference and heard a gentleman who was a birth father talk about his reunion with his son that was placed for adoption. And he, the adoption had taken place over 40 years ago. And it was something that was not it was known to him, but it wasn't really known to him. It was kind of complicated circumstances. And he had let the agency know that he wanted to be contacted if his child, he didn't know if it was a boy or girl, had wanted reunion. And after 18 years passed by, he contacted the agency again and said, I'd really like to know my child. And can you give me any information? And they couldn't, but he kept praying, kept hoping, kept staying open. He had told his wife and children, all, the marriage happened after this child was placed, so his children were all younger than the child that was placed. Um, so they all were hoping and praying someday to find this kind of, we'll say, missing member. And after 40 years, he was contacted. And it started slowly, but it got deeper. His child was a boy, so he had a son who was a father now himself. And it took a few years, but over the years, they started to build a trusting, strong relationship built on, respect, and it grew to love because, as they started, they were two strangers. And it really, again, starts with that expectations, because the what this gentleman said that just struck me was he wanted his son to know more than anything that he loved him and always hoped the best for him. There were no expectations set on him, nothing. He just wanted the opportunity to tell him that, whether he did it or the agency did it. But it grew into a, a beautiful, sweet reunion that now, his son has met the wife and his half siblings, and there is a relationship there. But starting with expectations that are um, that are not going to be, starting with expectations that you're going to meet a long lost somebody who, is ready to wrap you in their arms and be a parent, that may not be realistic. So it's always good to remember that those relationships, we need to really temper expectations and expect that, they may grow over a period of time, depending on how kind of everyone is with the opportunity.
Hmm. And when it comes to navigating these hopefully ongoing relationships, once you have had a chance to meet, I think something that helps is to try not to label the relationship. It's so unique. It's not always going to feel like she's your mom or dad,
Right.
or she's your aunt or uncle, or she's a friend or family friend. There's a very specific, unique connection between the two of you. And not putting a label on it, I think, is the most respectful thing you can do and will help you manage that expectation. And again, just let it be and grow into whatever it actually is. And reunion isn't the end of the story. And I love that you shared that, Heather, how their relationship has progressed and evolved from being strangers to now actually meeting his wife and other children, the adoptees' biological half siblings. I mean, that must enrich all of their lives to know
Hmm.
each other. And especially hearing that the birth father's family was actually longing to
Yeah.
meet, this man, this adoptee who's now at least 40 years old.
Hmm.
So reunion isn't the end. It's another chapter, and however it unfolds, your worth doesn't depend on someone else's readiness to connect. And I think worth and value It's something, these are words that are, I am enough, it's showing up all over the place, but it's kind of flippant. But really understanding your worth and really understanding your value helps you stand on that no matter who comes and goes in your life and who accepts you and may not accept you in life.
Hmm. And I think one of the things that, I heard many years ago, and I alluded to it a few minutes ago, is the adoption happened. You know, you do not have to define yourself as an adoptee. You were adopted. That's an event that happened, but it does not have to define you. And if what we're talking today again doesn't resonate, that's just fine. But, you know, what we hope you walk away from today is knowing that, throughout this, as Kim said, your worth doesn't depend on anything related into adoption. You were loved even before you knew it.
Your story may have layers, questions, and contradictions, but it's yours. And you get to decide how to make meaning from it.
Hmm. And when it comes to adoption, you can hold grief and gratitude at the same time. Um, you can also hold kind of nothing there. If you're good with it, that's great. You can be proud of who you are regardless. And it's okay to still be curious about where you came from.
And like Heather said, being adopted was an action that happened at one point. It was a one-time event, and you're more than what event took place.
Hmm.
You are who you've become partly because of it. Maybe yes, maybe no. And
Hmm.
there may be times throughout your life where you attach yourself more to your identity as an adoptee and less at other times. And that's all totally natural and totally okay.
Hmm. And maybe the biggest wait what moment of all is that, you know, the the story, your story is still unfolding. And how you carry and process your adoption. As maybe you learned a few things today, especially about the the love your birth mother may have had for you. That's part of your story too, and it still is unfolding in your life today.
Well, thank you for joining us for Let's Talk Adoption, and we welcome your feedback. If this episode resonated with you, let us know. Some aha moments you might have had, something that you connected with. You can go to letstalkadoption.com and connect with us there and fill out the little thing where you can email us, and we will always respond. We, we read every comment and email that comes in. If you have suggestions for future episodes, a guest you'd like to suggest, a book that you thought was great, anything and everything related to adoption, share it with us there on our Connect contact page. And, share this with another adoptee who might need a little encouragement today.
And remember, your story matters. Your voice matters. No matter how you're connected to adoption, you also are never alone in all this. So, thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and we'll be back next time.
Thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Adoption. If you'd like to learn more about today's episode, please visit letstalkadoption.com. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Until next time, take care and God bless.